Hey there, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia Season 7 video. And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, A Girl's Ego, which follows off from a number of big cliffhanger moments, namely the defeat of Darby and the impending clash of All Might and All for One. But we aren't following up on those this episode, or on Deku vs Shigaraki, which has been in stasis for many an episode at this point. Instead, we at long last catch up with the Toga storyline after seeing it teased a number of times in cold opens and previews. But here we are. Although it has gotten to the point that this is no longer the storyline I really wanted to follow up with, if we're being honest. The All Might versus All for One battle very much feels like the more intriguing prospect overall, although I get that they need to address this storyline too. And with the Darby battle over with, and with All for One having left this battle side as well, it is probably for the best to wrap up the Mountain Villa arc sooner rather than later. But before we go any further, I would like to say that I've not read the manga up to this point, so we're largely flying blind as of right now. No spoilers, just speculation found within. And so with all that being said, time to jump into the episode. We start off the episode with Toga remembering what Darby told her way back before the battle started, when he burned her childhood home down to help her move on from the past, with her then wondering if he was able to practice what he preached in the end. Was he laughing? So clearly, she's realised Darby is finished. He's cooked. In her eyes, he's probably dead. And it seems that gets her rather pissed off, as she immediately declares that she's going to annihilate the heroes, with her swarm of clones continuing to grow more and more. In the time between us last seeing them, it seems the majority of the heroes fighting here, they've been defeated. Roppy's down, Earphone Jack down, Gravity's being restrained, and it's really just the wild pussycats that are still up and about. Although that doesn't even last too long, as there's just so many. Way back when they killed off twice, I did remember thinking, well, that's a bit of a shocking twist, and that it was a shame to farewell his character so soon. But seeing this, how many doubles that quirk is actually capable of producing, with it only getting more and more intense the longer you go through the episode, yeah, I guess it pretty much does explain why he had to die when he did. At least here, Toga has a time limit, but he didn't, and so you'd need an absurd amount of plot armor to justify him being defeated in this battle. So I'll admit, with that thought, I had been wrong. Anyway, back to the battle. The Pussycats are the last left standing, but even they can't hold back this ever-increasing horde of doubles. They're overrun, and fair enough, realistically it would take a quirk of absurd power levels to be able to fight back against this, as we see later on in the episode. And even then, it wouldn't have defeated them if Ururaka hadn't been able to talk her down. But yes, this visual, very cool. It's just there to keep upping the stakes and show what a threat Toga is to the cause. And we also show a bunch of the heroes completely defeated and unlikely to be of any help whatsoever during the battle. There's Shoto and the Todoroki family. They're all burned down and out. Ida's finished. Hawks is quirkless and only has his sword, and he's also just cooked. Tokiyami's KO'd. It ain't looking good, and it's a great sequence. I feel like Toga, compared to all the other major villains of this arc to me, she felt the least prominent, interesting. Maybe not interesting, but perhaps I had the least investment in her battle, because ultimately, she seemed rather weak compared to some of the power players. Even Spinner got this massive power boost to justify him being a proper threat. But here in this context, it does actually make things more intriguing. Although at the same time I knew she had a time limit, so in the back of my mind I was thinking, well, maybe the heroes in this area would die, but it's not like she's going to be able to defeat everybody. She's too isolated now. So whilst it's cool, and she does seem like an immediate threat, I also feel like the moment has passed on her seeming like she could destroy all the heroes' resistance. All for One's already escaped from this area. I don't know, I just feel like her part of the story probably needed to happen a little bit earlier, whilst Darby and All for One were both still present, to make her seem like more of a threat if she takes out the rest of the heroes, because these two top tier fighters, they'd be left unchecked, able to do whatever they want. And here we come to the beginning of the clash. Ururaka versus Toga. And I'll be real, I don't really care about this, because it very much to me, even at the outset before they properly started their fight, it felt it's not necessarily a whitewash of Toga, but I do feel like the narrative kind of treats her with the kid's gloves. I mean, she is a dangerous lunatic. She's killed a lot of people. And whilst it feels like the other league members are acknowledged to have had bad lives and upbringings that shaped them into villains, there's still that massive element of personal accountability and a lack of a desire for justice, I guess. There's this desperation to save Toga as opposed to stopping her. Contrast that to Deku and Shigaraki, where Deku wants to save him, right? He also knows he'll have to fight and kill him potentially. And he didn't start talking when he turned up, he punched him right in the face. It's the same with Darby and Endeavor/Shoto. They knew that he had to be fought, that he had to be taken down. Endeavor knew that he personally would struggle with the fight, so Shoto had to face him alone at first. But here it just feels like she doesn't even want to really fight her, just use her words alone. And I don't know, it's just odd to me. Like, I know she's using some of her martial arts moves or whatever, but it's not really quite the same impact. There's a lot of cool moments in this episode specifically, but I'm just not feeling the overarching story. So Ururaka manages to latch onto the main body and starts talking to her and apologizing to her. Ururaka tries to reason with this murderous psycho and I guess get in her head, at least try to make her stop and think about how her murderous intent has corrupted her from being able to truly love her friends, or something along those lines. And this pisses Toga off more than anything because I suppose the truth hurts, and so she goes to murder Sue, who is being easily restrained by the doubles because she'd been weakened in the original fight on the island. And as she's going to do so, this Toga's screaming about how Ururaka needs to shut up, that she's never known what it's like to be on the outside looking in, unable to conform to the world around her. And here we get some sob story background to Toga, where we get actually a bit of an interesting look at one of the darker sides of Quirk society, and indeed the darker sides of society in general, ours included. We see that Toga never actually killed that bird. It fell out of the tree and died, and so she drank its blood out of her own empathy and desire to connect with it. She didn't brutalize it, but to her parents, this is a weird and alien and freakish thing to do. So her dad hits her. They treat her like a freak. They take her to specialists to try to fix her. They call her perverted. They want to straighten her out, change her. She's a deviant. She's scary. Wear a mask. All these different things. She's on the outside looking in, unable to find her own place in society. It isn't just those with physical differences who are shunned, like with Shoji and Spinner, but also those who see the world and interact with it differently. She wasn't always a violent person, but years of abuse and repression caused her to snap. And I like this because it's sympathetic, and it shows that she's not evil because she has a villain quirk. She was pushed down that path somewhat as her mental health continued to deteriorate. Although I feel like, even though this is the explanation, like with the others, they all have one too, but with this episode, it does at times almost treat it like an excuse, which I disagree with. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I feel like it's presented here, like an excuse. And so the battle begins once more, with Ururaka saving Sue just in time, with Woods then catching her, whilst he also helps Jiro, so at least one of the top heroes is still going strong. But at this point, it's also revealed that a bunch of the Twice clones have been ingesting the blood that's been flying around the battlefield, and now there are clones of Sue, Jiro, everybody really, many of them with truly cursed faces. Yikes, the Froppy ones especially are creepy to me. And speaking of Froppy, she tries to reason with one of the clones of her to try to get her to listen to Ururaka. After all, Uraraka's not trying to capture or kill Toga. She just wants to talk, which, sure, I guess. And in the chaos of all of this, Ururaka gets stabbed, and stabbed pretty badly in the stomach, enough that she's coughing up blood. I do have to wonder though, in the world of gadgets and whatnot, why would you not have your hero costume designed that's more than just clothes? Surely at minimum, you'd want a super suit that's highly resistant to things like being stabbed or shot, slashing, all those sorts of things. Types of materials that actually exist in the world today without powers. Just feels like common sense to me. And as she stabs her, she demands that Ururaka doesn't try to turn her into an object of pity, before we springboard into a flashback of the old school League of Villains. And this scene was a lot of fun. Banter between the members about villain names, a lot of charm, a lot of personality, and a reminder of that lighthearted air the show used to have. I kind of miss this sort of vibe at times. And I wish we'd seen more of this type of stuff from the League on screen. I especially like Shigaraki talking about how he specifically doesn't need a special villain name, but that he did think the practice was very cool. I think it adds a lot of depth and personality to the characters and the story and their relationships to one another. Back in the present, the battle begins again, as Toga gets angrier and angrier, thinking Ururaka is either full of shit and is waiting for the chance to kill her if Toga lets her guard down, or that she's patronizing her or trying to stroke her own ego by being able to say that she saved her. And these are all very reasonable assumptions if you ask me. Why should she trust her after all? And so now she has the numbers to truly overwhelm the heroes with a sad man's legion. And here we get yet another shot of the clones just growing beyond control, with the newscasters doomsaying and talking about the quirk singularity theory, about how every generation, quirks will grow until they can no longer be controlled. And so really, what can one wounded hero do against a legion of clones? Why, she can use gunhead martial arts, of course. Oh, she better give that guy a present or something. I swear it's her go-to attack for every single situation, and it often works. It's versatile, I'll give it that. And didn't she learn them in a week? Whew. And I gotta say, it really just does obliterate the clones, doesn't it? They go flying, nobody lands a hit on her. Impressive, all things considered, that she could scatter them so easily. In response to Toga telling her that her attack didn't hurt anything at all, Ururaka then replies that her power is not one that is supposed to be used for violence, which in turn gives Toga some flashbacks, increasing her instability. Surprise, surprise. Whilst Ururaka keeps making moves of her own, saying that while she can't accept Toga's actions, and that she has killed people, there might have been a good reason for her to do that. A good reason. It's like, what good reason for murdering someone? Drinking their blood. Sure, why not? Why not? I just think the messaging of this episode's really weird, and it's a weird angle to take things. To show that Toga can somewhat change from just one person accepting her. One person telling her she's valid and she's not a freak. I did think the whole sequence where Ururaka's compassionate heart lets her ascend and unlock her quirk, allowing her to float people without even touching them. They just need to be touching one another, a big gravity chain. That was badass. And I loved this part. I loved those shots. Looked awesome. But yeah, I get that she says that she can't accept everything about her, like the murder. But it very much feels like that's just a weird asterisk moment. Like the story doesn't want you to really focus on that compared to her seeming to genuinely want to be friends with this legitimate serial killer. So yeah, whilst the messaging of the last chunk of the episode feels very off to me, I mean, I get having compassion for the villains, but this felt next level. The actual animation and the music though, it was so epic that I think it carried it. And Ururaka admitting that she's in love with Deku was very nice. Hopefully they pull the trigger on that at some point, because too many mangas and animes end and they leave that shit up to audience interpretation. No thank you. But yeah, all of this talking, it somehow works. I guess it gave Toga hope that at least somebody from normal society, a hero, could accept her for who she was. But yeah, the sequence was awesome here too, with the film roll behind the shot of her going to stab Ururaka, going back over her backstory. Really cool animation, really cool story choices, I can admit that much, but yeesh! The actual content is weird, and then she talks to her about Saito, that poor bastard she stabbed and drank with a straw. And she even gets called the cutest in the world. I realise Ururaka doesn't know the full extent, and I think that she knows that Toga is unstable and thus talking to her requires finesse. But the way the episode frames it with the sparkles and the music and shit, it makes it seem like this is all a positive, and I'm just sitting here thinking, is it? Is Ted Bundy also the cutest in the world? Does he deserve a tearful embrace from a police officer who apologises to him for not seeing the signs earlier? Not stopping him earlier? Anyway, that's the end of the episode. Next time we go back to All Might, maybe him and All For One can talk it out and apologise and cry. And so with all that being said, these have all been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Do you like it, hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and let me know.